Sarah Alvarez pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the ICU window and watched her little girl lie still in the bed. Lily's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, each one a small victory against the illness that had taken hold of her tiny body. The steady beeping of the heart monitor was Sarah's only constant, a drumbeat of hope mixed with fear. Outside the door, the corridor was quiet except for the muffled footsteps of nurses on their rounds. Sarah had not eaten in hours, and her throat felt raw from praying under her breath. As Lily's mother, she had promised to protect her daughter with everything she had. Now she wondered if that promise would be enough. Sarah thought back to the day Lily was born. It had been a sunny morning in late spring when Sarah first heard her daughter's cry. She remembered the weight of Lily in her arms and the flood of love that washed over her. In that moment, Sarah had felt invincible. But the years that followed had been harder than she ever imagined. As a single mother, she worked mornings stocking shelves at the local grocery store and evenings cleaning offices downtown. When Lily was well, Sarah found joy in small moments, reading picture books in bed, laughing together in the park, and sharing ice cream cones on hot afternoons. But bills piled up faster than she could pay them, and the dream of a stable home felt out of reach. A month ago, Sarah noticed Lily growing tired more easily. At first, she thought it was just a phase. Children sometimes slow down for no reason, she told herself. But then Lily began waking at night, her little body trembling with effort as she tried to breathe. Sarah took her to the family clinic, and after a series of tests, the doctor's words landed on her like stones. Lily had a congenital heart defect, and it was severe. The only chance to save her was surgery, one that cost far more than Sarah's meager savings. Her heart ached when she realized how little time she had before Lily's condition worsened. Each morning, Sarah rushed through her 2 jobs with the thought of Lily guiding every step. She skipped lunches to send every spare dollar home, did extra cleaning shifts on weekends, and even sold homemade cookies to neighbors. But the mounting hospital bills loomed over her like a storm cloud. At home, she counted receipts and gas money, trying to stretch each coin. Sleep came in stolen minutes, her dreams always filled with Lily's frightened face and the echoing sentence, "You can't lose her now." Today, Sarah found herself in the hospital corridor long before dawn. She felt the cold tiles under her feet and the sharp smell of disinfectant in the air. The white walls seemed to close in around her as she walked back and forth. Other families came and went, some greeting visitors with hopeful smiles, others wiping tears when doors opened too slowly. Sarah paused outside Lily's room, her heart threatening to break with every word she did not hear. She put a hand on the wall and closed, her eyes murmuring a prayer she barely understood. She asked for courage, for strength, and above all, for a way to save her daughter. A nurse peeked out and nodded softly at Sarah. Sarah managed a small smile but felt tears prick her eyes. She pressed her hand to her heart, willing Lily to keep fighting. She remembered the first time Lily had laughed at a bubble floating through the air. She remembered the way Lily's eyes lit up when she saw a bright yellow balloon at her birthday party. Those memories were Sarah's most precious treasures, and she refused to let them slip away. Every beat of the heart monitor was a promise that Lily was still here, still fighting. Sarah's mind raced with plans. Maybe she could ask the doctor for a payment plan. Maybe she could start a fundraiser online. Maybe someone would hear her story and help. But each plan felt fragile, like a paper boat on stormy water. She had never asked strangers for money and felt a deep discomfort at the idea of charity. Yet here she was, facing the hardest choice of her life. Pride weighed heavily on her shoulders, but love weighed more. She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and prepared herself to speak again to the hospital's financial office. Her thoughts were interrupted when the doctor stepped out, his face kind but serious. He checked his clipboard and met Sarah's anxious gaze, explained gently that Lily's surgery was scheduled for tomorrow morning, but that all costs had to be confirmed first. Sarah nodded and swallowed hard. Tomorrow? Just hours away? She forced herself to smile and thanked him, even though her voice trembled. As he walked away, she felt the world tilt beneath her feet. There was no turning back now. Sarah sank onto a nearby chair and reached for her phone. She typed a message to her best friend, Maria, asking for any help, any advice. Maria replied almost immediately, offering to talk to her brother who worked in finance. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. She typed another message to the hospital administrator, pleading for time, promising to pay back every cent. Her thumb hovered over send. She hesitated, knowing once the message went, there was no undoing it. Finally, she pressed send. She covered her face with her hands and let the tears flow. Tears of fear, tears of hope, and tears of fierce love. As the sun rose, light filtered through the tall windows and painted the corridor in soft gold. Sarah lifted her head and wiped her cheeks. The promise of a new day, she told herself, brought new possibilities. She closed her eyes and whispered to Lily, "Mama is going to save you. I promise." The words felt small against the enormity of the challenge, but they carried the weight of her heart. She stood, braced herself against the wall, and took one firm step forward. She would do whatever it took to keep that promise. Sarah woke before sunrise the next day, her heart heavy with worry. She dressed quickly in the small chapel just outside the hospital. The wooden benches were cold, and the smell of polished wood mixed with faint incense. She knelt at the front, clutching her prayer book even though she hardly knew the words. She whispered into the quiet, "Please help my baby. Please give me away." Her voice trembled as she thought of Lily's tiny chest and the soft beeps of the heart monitor. Each beat was a promise, but she feared it might stop. The chapel's stained glass windows glowed with pale light, painting red and blue patterns on the floor. Sarah let herself believe that this place could bring a miracle. Just then, the door creaked open. A tall man stepped in, closing the door gently behind him. He wore a dark suit and carried a leather briefcase. His hair was salt and pepper at the temples. He paused when he saw Sarah, alone and vulnerable in her prayer. For a moment, he stood silently watching her. Sarah did not notice him at first. She closed her eyes and bowed her head. Her hands felt numb from the cold wood. She thought of Lily's laugh when they had played hide-and-seek in the living room. She thought of Lily's small hand gripping her finger when the thunderstorm had frightened her. Tears fell down Sarah's cheeks, and she prayed harder. The man cleared his throat softly, and Sarah jumped. She looked up, startled, gave her a gentle smile, kind, warm, and not at all like the strangers who'd usually avoided her eyes. He spoke in a calm voice. "I'm sorry to disturb you." Sarah swallowed hard, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I did not mean to intrude," he said. "I come here often when I need peace. I saw you walking by and thought you might like company." Sarah did not know how to answer. She studied the man's face, searching for judgment or pity. Instead, she found concern. His gray eyes were full of understanding. Hesitantly, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. She tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. He gestured to the bench beside her. "May I sit?" he asked. She nodded again. They sat side by side in silence. The only sound was the soft ticking of an old clock near the altar. After a long moment, the man closed his briefcase and placed it on the floor. "My name is James," he said, his voice gentle. "And you are?" Sarah cleared her throat. "I'm Sarah Alvarez." He offered his hand, and she shook it. His grip was firm but kind. He waited, as if expecting her to speak. Sarah looked at her hands folded in her lap. She felt strange talking about her troubles with a stranger, but something about James felt safe. She took a breath. "I'm here for my daughter," she said. "She needs surgery tomorrow." James nodded slowly. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I know how hard it is to feel helpless when someone you love is in danger." Sarah's voice broke as she said, "I would do anything to save her, but I don't have enough money." She looked at him, her eyes pleading. "Please save my baby," she added, her words a quiet cry. James frowned, deep in thought. Oh. He looked down at his briefcase, then back to Sarah's tear-stained face. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if praying for guidance. When he opened them, There was a new firmness in his gaze. "Tell me about your daughter," he said softly. Sarah drew in a shaky breath. She told him how Lily was 7 years old and loved painting pictures of rainbows. She spoke of Lily's laughter, her hugs, her gentle kiss on Sarah's cheek every night. She told James about the day Lily had chosen a bright yellow dress for her birthday, even though the sky was gray. Each story came out with emotion, and James listened without interrupting. Somewhere in the back of the chapel, a beam of sunlight broke through the colored glass and landed on James's hands. Sarah watched as he folded them together.
She suddenly
knew that he cared. Her chest tightened with hope and fear mixed together. "The hospital says they need full payment before surgery," she said. "I've asked for payment plans. I've borrowed from friends. I even sold my old jewelry, but it's still not enough." James looked at her, his brow furrowed. "I believe money should not stand between a child and her chance to live," he said firmly. Sarah felt a rush of relief so strong she thought her heart might leap, but she was afraid to hope. "I don't know how. What will happen if—" She trailed off. James reached over and gently touched her arm. "I want to help," he said simply. Sarah froze. We did not know what to say. She had never accepted. Help before it felt too embarrassing, too much like defeat.
Ow.
But she saw honesty in his face, and tears rose again. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "You don't know me? You don't know my story?" "I know you're a mother who loves her daughter," James said. "That is enough." He paused, then opened his briefcase. He pulled out an envelope, with his thick and white, with his name printed on the front. He slid it across the bench. "To Sarah, this will cover the surgery," he said. "No strings. No need to pay me back unless you want to. I just want to help." Sarah looked at the envelope as if it might disappear. She lifted it with trembling fingers. Her thoughts raced. Pride whispered that she should refuse. Fear whispered that it could be a trick. Love roared louder. She closed her eyes, took a steadying breath, and laid her hand over his. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. "Thank you so much." James smiled softly. "Let's get your daughter better," he said. Sarah felt warmth flood her chest. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine Lily laughing again, running in the park, painting rainbows on her bedroom wall. She felt hope bloom. They sat together. For a moment longer, neither speaking. The silence felt like healing. Then James stood and picked up his briefcase. He offered his hand to help Sarah to her feet. She accepted, and they walked out of the chapel together. As they reached the hospital corridor, Sarah's knees felt weak. James guided her gently toward the surgical wing. Before she entered the financial office, Sarah stopped. She turned to James, eyes shining. "I want you to know. You're a blessing," she said. "I don't know how to thank you." James shook his head. "Seeing your daughter well, that will be thanks enough," he said. Sarah took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. She walked into the office, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. The billing clerk looked up, surprised. Sarah handed over the envelope and explained that the payment was already arranged. The clerk counted the money, stamped papers, and nodded. "You're all set," she said. Sarah felt tears of relief bubble up again. She managed a small smile before she hurried out. In the hallway, James was waiting. He smiled at her, that same gentle smile. "Everything is set," he said. Sarah felt her heart swell. "I don't know how to repay you," she said. "Just promise me one thing," James replied. "Promise me you'll let yourself accept help when you need it." Sarah nodded, understanding at last that accepting kindness did not make her weak, made her human. They walked together toward Lily's room. Sarah's steps felt lighter. She squeezed James's hand in gratitude. The beeping monitor sounded just the same, but now the rhythm felt hopeful instead of frightening. Tomorrow, the surgery would come. But tonight, Sarah had found a friend and a chance for her daughter to live. Sarah's footsteps echoed softly as she walked down the hospital corridor toward Lily's room. The envelope with James's gift felt heavy in her pocket, yet it carried a lightness she had never known before. She paused outside the door and took a deep breath. Through the small window, she saw her daughter, bundled under a pink blanket, her tiny face calm in sleep. Nurses moved quietly around the bed, checking monitors and adjusting for lines. Sarah pressed her palm against the door and entered, careful not to startle them. "Good morning," she whispered to the nurse. The nurse smiled kindly. "She's ready for surgery," she said softly. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she managed. The nurse patted her arm and left to deliver instructions. Sarah approached Lily's bed and bent down. She brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Lily's eyelids fluttered, and a weak smile formed. "Mama," she murmured. Sarah's throat tightened. "Hey, little one," she said. "It's time to get better, okay?" Lily blinked and reached for her mother's hand. Sarah squeezed it gently. Outside the operating room, Sarah met James for the first time since their walk through the chapel. He stood near a bank of windows, looking out at the hospital garden. He turned when he heard her approach. His dark suit was crisp, and his gray hair caught the early light. "She's in good hands," he said, his voice steady. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. She felt a tremor of relief mixed with fear. James laid a hand on her shoulder. "I'll stay as long as you need," he offered. Sarah looked into his eyes and saw warmth there. She nodded again. "Thank you," she said, voice small. James gave her a gentle smile. "Let's sit," he said, motioning to the chairs. They sat in silence for a few moments. Sarah's mind raced through memories of Lily, her first steps, her first word, her laugh as she chased a butterfly in the yard. Each memory was a reminder of why this moment mattered so much. As the minutes passed, the clock on the wall ticked louder in the quiet waiting room. Sarah watched James's face for any sign of doubt, but he remained calm. He took out a small notebook and pen and began to write. Curious, Sarah leaned in. He was sketching a simple flower, just 5 petals around a bright center. "My daughter's favorite flower," he said, showing it to Sarah. "I lost her 2 years ago." Sarah's breath caught. She remembered how James had spoken of loss in the chapel, but she had not realized how deep his grief ran. "I'm sorry," she whispered. James shook his head. "I promised myself that no parent would feel the helplessness I felt," he said. "When I saw you, I knew I had to do something." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You've already done more than I can say," she said. He folded the notebook and slipped it into his jacket. "I'll be right here when she wakes up," he said. Hours seemed to stretch into days as they sat together. Sarah tried to read her book, but her mind kept drifting to Lily. She paced the corridor, rubbing her palms against her skirt to calm herself. Each time she passed the nurse's station, she asked for updates. Each time she heard the same words, "She's stable. The surgery went well. Recovery is slow but steady." Her heart both leaped and settled. By mid-afternoon, the surgeon appeared. His face was weary but kind. "Sarah?" asked. Sarah approached, tears in her eyes. "The operation was a success," he said. "We corrected the defect, and the heart is pumping normally. She'll need time to heal, but I expect a full recovery." Relief washed over Sarah like warm sun. She closed her eyes and let a sob slip out. The surgeon placed a hand on her shoulder. "Take your time," he said. "She did very well." Sarah turned and nearly ran to Lily's bedside. She sat and held her daughter's hand. Lily's eyes were closed, but her breathing was strong and regular. Sarah stroked her hair and whispered words of love. "You're going to be okay," she said. "You're so brave." Lily's eyelids fluttered, and she weakly squeezed her mother's hand. Sarah laughed through her tears and kissed her forehead. James appeared quietly at the doorway. He watched the reunion with soft eyes. Sarah looked up and offered him a grateful smile. He stepped forward and knelt beside Lily. He placed a gentle hand on her blanket. "Hello, Lily," he said quietly. Lily opened her eyes and blinked at the stranger. Sarah swallowed her instinct to be wary. James smiled warmly and said, "I'm your friend." Over the next day, Sarah and James settled into a routine by Lily's bedside. They shared small moments of normal life. Sarah read Lily's favorite story about a brave rabbit who saved his friends. James hummed a gentle tune from his childhood. When nurses came to adjust IVs, James stepped aside respectfully. They laughed quietly when Lily's cheeks flushed with fever and she mumbled something about wanting ice cream. Sarah's heart felt full and light at the same time. At night, when the room was dark and the beeping of monitors sounded louder, Sarah felt panic rising. She held Lily's hand tightly and looked at James. "I'm scared," she whispered. James reached out and held her other hand. "She's strong," he said. "She has you, and she has me." Sarah nodded, leaning on his calm presence. The third day after surgery, Lily was awake and alert. Her cheeks were rosy, and she smiled at Sarah and James. "I missed you," she said softly. Sarah hugged her daughter close. "I missed you too," she said. Lily looked over at James. "Thank you," she whispered. James's eyes glistened. He knelt again and offered his hand to Lily. "You did great," he said, as the recovery progressed. Sarah saw James in a new light. He did not act like a rich stranger who simply had money to spare. Instead, he was humble and caring. He asked about Lily's favorite color, pink. Of course, Anne promised to bring her a balloon. He listened when Sarah talked about their struggles, but he never offered pity. He offered friendship and respect. One afternoon, Sarah called James to the window and pointed to the garden below. It was filled with bright flowers and green grass. A little playground sat nearby, empty now. Sarah sighed. "I wish Lily could run out there," she said. James looked thoughtful. "Maybe soon," he said. He turned back to his briefcase and pulled out a small packet of seeds. "Daisy seeds," he said. "Your daughter's favorite," Sarah smiled. Through tears, James held out the packet to her. "You can plant them together when she's stronger," he said. Sarah accepted the seeds and hugged him. She felt a warmth that had little to do with the morning sun. She realized that James's kindness had given her more than money. He had given her hope and renewed faith in people. On the 5th day, the doctor said Lily could move to a regular room. Sarah and Lily packed up their things, and James helped carry the small bag of toys and coloring books. Lily held the daisy seed packet like a treasure. She looked at James and said, "We'll plant these, right?" James nodded. "First thing after you go home," he said. As they walked through the quiet hallways, Sarah felt a sense of victory. They were leaving the place that had felt so cold and scary. Lily tumbled ahead, her blanket wrapped like a cape, and Sarah laughed to see her daughter's playful spirit. Returned James walked beside them and held the door open. Nurses greeted them with smiles. Even the doctor gave a nod of approval. Outside, the sun shone brightly. Sarah felt the warmth on her face and closed her eyes for a moment, letting it soak in. She glanced at James and said, "Thank you for everything." He waved off her thanks. "Seeing her well is enough," he said. He opened his wallet and pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything at all, call me," he said. Sarah took the card. She felt tears again, but these were tears of joy. Lily grabbed Sarah's hand and skipped ahead. Sarah smiled at James. He nodded his goodbyes and turned away, his coat billowing slightly. Sarah watched him go, her heart full. They climbed into the old family car, Sarah's only Courant. Lily sat in the back, humming. Sarah held the steering wheel and exhaled. The road ahead felt open and full of promise. She reached into her pocket and touched the envelope James had given her. It was empty now, but its power lived in her heart. As they drove away from the hospital, Lily pressed her face against the window and watched the buildings pass. Sarah sang a soft song to her daughter, her voice shaky but strong. Lily sang along in her sweet small voice. Sarah glanced at her in the rearview mirror and saw bright eyes, full of life. Ace. When they reached home, Sarah carried Lily through the front door. The small living room felt different now, a place where they had shared tough days and hopeful nights. Sarah placed the daisy seeds on the windowsill, where light would reach them. Lily clapped her hands. "We'll plant them tomorrow, Mama," she said. Sarah hugged her daughter tight. "We will," she promised. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, she watched her daughter's chest rise and fall peacefully. She remembered the fear she had felt before James intervened, the nights of endless worry, the days of tears in quiet chapels. Now she felt something new, a sense of safety and the knowledge that people could be kind beyond measure. Sarah turned off the light and kissed Lily's forehead. Lily murmured, Good night, Mama. Good night, James. Sarah smiled and whispered, Good night, my love. She closed the door gently. In the hallway, she found a note left by James on her small table by the door. It said only this: Life is precious. Never lose hope. Sarah read the words again and felt their truth settle in her heart. Sarah woke early with a start, sunlight slipping through the curtains of Lily's room. She sat up slowly and watched her daughter sleep. Lily's face was peaceful now, framed by soft curls on the pillow. The steady rise and fall of her chest felt like music to Sarah's ears. Gently, she slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the window. The daisy seeds lay in a little pot by the sill, waiting for their turn in the earth. Sarah smiled, her heart full of hope. Downstairs, the living room was quiet. A note from James rested on the coffee table. Breakfast at 9. I'll bring something special. Sarah felt warmth bloom inside her. She had not expected him to follow through, but the thought that he cared enough to bring breakfast made her smile. She hurried into the kitchen, tying her apron. She filled the kettle and arranged mugs on the counter. She wanted to make coffee strong and sweet, just how James had once mentioned he liked it. At 9 o'clock, there was a soft knock on the door. Sarah opened it to find James standing with a tray. On it was a plate of warm muffins, golden and soft, and steaming mugs of coffee. He placed the tray on the table and smiled. Good morning, he said softly. His eyes crinkled at the corners, and Sarah felt a flutter in her chest. Good morning, she replied, pouring the coffee into the mugs. The rich scent filled the air. They sat at the small table, and Sarah offered James a muffin. These smell amazing, he said, taking a bite. He closed his eyes for a moment and sighed with pleasure. Thank you for this, he said. Thought Lily might like something fresh. Sarah nodded. She felt something like respect and gratitude mixing together. She had never imagined that a wealthy stranger could feel so kind and genuine. After breakfast, they gathered Lily in her wheelchair and took her into the garden behind the house. The grass was soft beneath the wheels, and the flowers swayed in the gentle breeze. Sarah's heart leaped when she saw the small patch of earth waiting for the daisy seeds. Lily watched with bright eyes, her face framed by the pink blanket. James knelt beside the patch and handed the packet of seeds to Lily. Here you go, he said. These are your daisies. Lily's small fingers trembled as she opened the packet. She poured a few seeds into her hand and looked at Sarah. Where do I put them? She asked. Sarah knelt on the grass and showed her daughter. Just gently press them into the soil, she said. With careful concentration, Lily pressed each seed into the earth, her tongue peeking out at the corner of her mouth. James smiled, standing behind them, proud. When the planting was done, Sarah patted the soil and covered the seeds with more earth. Lily clapped her hands and said, Now we wait. James laughed. Yes, he said. But soon you'll see. Little green shoots. Lily looked up at him and nodded solemnly. I will water them every day, she promised. They spent the rest of the morning in the garden. Sarah and James picked more flowers from the larger beds: petunias, marigolds, and pansies. They filled a small basket with blooms and brought them inside. Sarah arranged them in a vase on the kitchen table. The bright colors seemed to chase away every shadow of the last few weeks. That afternoon, Sarah invited James to stay while Lily rested. They sat in the living room with coffee mugs and talked in gentle tones. Sarah asked James about his work. In his travels, he spoke of business meetings and tall city buildings and flights on airplanes. Yet, whenever he looked at Sarah, his words softened. It was as if he measured every sentence so he would not overwhelm her. Sarah nodded. She had sensed that he carried a deep sadness. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and spoke slowly. Her name was Emily, he said. She was 6 years old, just a little older than Lily. Sarah's heart ached. She remembered how scared she had been when Lily was. In danger, now she felt a unique sympathy for James, who had lost his own child. I lost her 2 years ago, he continued. One morning she woke with a fever. It was something simpler virus, but her body could not fight it. His voice trembled, and Sarah reached out and placed her hand on his. I'm so sorry, she whispered. James nodded. I spent so many nights in that same hospital chapel, begging for a miracle, he said. I would have given anything to keep her alive. He swallowed hard and wiped a tear from his eye. When I saw you, I saw the same fear and love in your eyes that I had when I watched Emily fight. Sarah felt tears pooling in her own eyes. She squeezed James's hand. You helped Lily because you knew my pain, she said softly. James looked at her with gentle eyes. I helped her because I believe love cannot be measured by loss, he said, because I believe hope can shine in the darkest places. Sarah nodded, feeling something shift inside her. In James she saw both loss and generosity. She realized that kindness could come from the deepest wounds. Lily stirred in her bed upstairs, and Sarah kissed James's hand before she followed the sound. She found Lily awake and smiling. Mama, Lily said. James told me about Emily. Sarah sat by her daughter's side and held her hand. Entered quietly and knelt beside Lily. Lily reached out and touched his cheek. I'm sorry about Emily, she said softly. James closed his eyes and let a tear fall. Thank you, Lily, he said. Your words mean a lot. Sarah felt a new bond forming between all of them. They were more than patient and stranger now. They were a circle of care and understanding. As Lily rested, Sarah guided James back. Downstairs, she poured them both tea. The conversation turned to lighter topics: favorite books, childhood games, funny memories. They laughed together, their voices mingling in the warm kitchen. That evening, Sarah cooked a simple dinner-baked chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed carrots. The smell filled the house and made their mouths water. Lily sat in her chair by the table, nibbling on soft bread. James complimented Sarah's cooking, praising the flavors. He even asked for the recipe, promising to make it for his friends back in the city. After dinner, Sarah washed the dishes while James dried them. They worked side by side, comfortable in each other's company. When the last plate was clean, James turned and looked at Sarah. You're strong, he said quietly. You've faced so much, yet you keep going. Sarah paused and met his gaze. I have to, she said simply, for Lily. James nodded, and a silence fell between them, one filled with respect and empathy. Later, they sat in the living room with soft blankets and a movie on the screen. Lily snuggled between them, her head resting on Sarah's shoulder. James reached out and placed an arm around Sarah, and she leaned against him. Story unfold, but their minds were elsewhere, full of gratitude for each other's presence. As the movie ended, Lily yawned and rubbed her eyes. Sarah lifted her up and carried her to bed. James followed with a gentle smile. Sarah tucked Lily in and brushed her hair back. Thank you again, she said to James, for everything. Knelt by Lily's bed and whispered goodnight. Lily closed her eyes, her breathing steady. Sarah and James returned to the living room. Silence wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Sarah looked at James and felt tears against tears of gratitude, of shared sorrow, and of new friendship. I never thought I could feel so safe, she said. James reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. You deserve safety, he replied, and joy. They sat together in the dim light, two people joined by loss and by hope. Outside, the garden waited, quiet and still, holding the promise of daisies and new life. Inside, Sarah and James discovered that sometimes the greatest healing comes from unexpected bonds, when strangers become friends, and when love finds a way to shine through grief. In the days that followed, their routine continued. James visited every morning with muffins or fresh fruit. Sarah shared her simple meals and her laughter. Lily's strength returned day by day, and she grew more curious about the world around her. Sarah watched as her daughter's eyes lit up with each passing moment, and James watched as Sarah's love carried them all through the hardest times. One afternoon, Sarah found James in the garden, watching the place where they had planted the seeds. The soil was dark and damp from their careful watering, and tiny green shoots were already poking through. Sarah knelt beside him and touched a delicate sprout. "They're growing," she said, voice soft. James nodded, his eyes shining. "Just like hope," he said. Sarah smiled and leaned on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. James wrapped an arm around her and held her close. "Thank you for letting me help," he said. They sat together in the garden, watching the new life emerging from the earth, and for a moment they all felt complete. Mother, daughter, and friend, bound by love, loss, and the promise of tomorrow. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window and fell on the small vase of daisies blooming on the table. Sarah stood by the counter, stirring oatmeal in a bowl for Lily, who sat eagerly at her chair. Her daughter's cheeks were rosy, her eyes bright with energy. It was hard to believe that just days ago Lily had been too weak to sit up. Now she chattered about school, about wanting to paint new pictures of rainbows and flowers. Each word she spoke filled Sarah's heart with joy and relief. James arrived quietly, holding a carton of fresh strawberries and a small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked from the roadside. He handed the fruit to Sarah and smiled at Lily. "Good morning, brave girl," he said gently. Lily beamed at him and waved a spoon happily. Sarah set the strawberries in a bowl and nodded her thanks. To James, even in this simple kitchen, his kindness felt like a gift. Sarah poured milk over the oatmeal and brought the bowls to the table. They sat together, sharing the meal and talking about the day ahead. After breakfast, Sarah and Lily went to the garden to check on the daisy patch. Tiny white petals surrounded yellow centers, bobbing gently in the breeze. Lily knelt on the grass and touched the flowers with wonder. "They're so pretty," she whispered. Sarah sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her daughter. "You planted them with love," she said. "That's why they grew so well." Lily looked at her mother and smiled. Sarah felt tears in her eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude and hope. James joined them in the garden, carrying a small watering can. He knelt beside Lily and helped her water the flowers carefully. Water droplets fell on the green leaves and sparkled in the sunlight. Sarah watched as James guided her daughter's hand. The scene felt like a painting of peace and new beginnings. When the watering was done, Lily turned to James and hugged him. "Thank you for helping me grow my daisies," she said. James hugged her gently. "You did all the hard work," he replied. Later in the morning, Sarah gathered her courage and opened the envelope James had given her before Lily's surgery. Inside was a check made out to the hospital, but also extra funds for Lily's future needs: medicine, checkups, school supplies. Sarah felt a wave of humility and relief. She knew she could never repay James for his generosity, but she also knew that she could honor his gift by giving her daughter the best life possible. She closed the envelope and placed it in a drawer where she would keep it safe. That afternoon, Sarah decided to give back a little. She prepared a basket of homemade cookies and warm soup and delivered it to the hospital staff who had cared for Lily. Nurses and doctors accepted the gifts with surprise and gratitude. "You have a special way of making people feel appreciated," one nurse told her. Sarah smiled and shrugged. "I just want to say thank you," she said. As she left, her heart felt lighter. She had passed on a bit of the kindness she had received. When Sarah returned home, Lily asked to paint. Sarah set out paper, brushes, and bright colors. Lily dipped her brush in paint and created a new rainbow, this time with daisies under it. Sarah watched, amazed at how her daughter's spirit had returned. She snapped a photo of the painting and sent it to James with a message. "Thank you for bringing hope back into our lives." Within moments, James replied with a heart emoji and a promise to frame the picture for his office. Evening fell, and the three of them sat on the porch sipping hot chocolate. The garden beyond glowed softly in the fading light. Fireflies danced among the flowers. Sarah wrapped a blanket around Lily's shoulders while James passed a mug to her. They spoke quietly about simple joys books they loved, places they hoped to visit, games they planned to play. There was no awkwardness now, only friendship and trust. As darkness deepened, Lily grew sleepy. Sarah carried her inside and tucked her into bed. Lily yawned and reached for her mother's hand. "I love you, Mama," she whispered. Sarah kissed her forehead. "I love you more," she said. Lily's eyes closed, and Sarah watched the steady rise and fall of her chest. Every moment she had feared losing her daughter. Now those moments felt distant, as if they belonged to another life. Downstairs, Sarah found James waiting by the window. He held 2 cups of herbal tea, handed one to her, and offered a small smile. They sat in the quiet living room, the only sound, the soft hum of the heater. Sarah lifted her cup and met his eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. He nodded and took a gentle sip. "Seeing Lily well is my reward," he replied. Sarah thought of the journey they had taken together, the hospital corridors, the chapel, prayers, the fear and the tears. And she thought of the moments of kindness that had carried them through. "You taught me something important," she said, "that it's okay to let people help you." James set down his cup and looked at her. "We all need help sometimes," he said, "and giving it can heal us too." They sat together in companionable silence, watching the night settle outside. Stars glittered overhead. Sarah felt peace she had not known for a long time. She leaned, her head on James's shoulder. He placed his arm around her and held her close. In that moment, she understood that life's hardest trials could also bring its greatest blessings. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of laughter. She hurried downstairs to find Lily and James playing a board game at the kitchen table. Lily rolled the dice and shouted with delight as she moved her piece ahead. James cheered for her, and Sarah joined in. The room rang with their joy. Sarah smiled, feeling the warmth of love and friendship fill every corner of her heart.
Later.
That day, Sarah sat at her desk and wrote in her journal. She wrote about gratitude, about how hope had grown like a seed into a beautiful flower in their lives. She wrote about the power of kindness and how a stranger's gift had changed everything. And she wrote about her promise to pass on that kindness whenever she could. In the weeks that followed, Sarah returned to work with renewed strength. She saved every extra dollar and used some to start a small fund to help other families in need. She spoke with her coworkers and organized a bake sale to raise money for the children's ward at the hospital. When she needed a break, she visited the garden and tended the daisies, watching their petals open to the sun. James continued to visit, sometimes bringing a new book for Lily, sometimes simply sharing tea with Sarah on the porch. Their friendship deepened without rush or expectation. Sarah learned to lean on him when she felt tired, and James found comfort in her laughter and hope in Lily's bright smile. One afternoon, as golden leaves drifted down around them in early fall, Sarah brought Lily and James to a small community event at the park. They walked together under red and orange trees, hand in hand. Lily skipped ahead, her laughter ringing. James and Sarah followed, their steps in quiet harmony. It felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one in which love and generosity would guide each of them. And so life went on. Lily grew stronger each day, her world filled with color and laughter. Sarah faced new challenges, but did so with courage, knowing she was not alone. James discovered that healing could come from helping others, and that friendship could bloom from the seeds of kindness. Together, they proved that even in the darkest times, a single act of compassion could light a path to new beginnings.